All right, welcome everyone to today's episode of the Messiah Hour here on IsraelSportsAndNewsRadio.com. We have a great show for you today. If you have any questions throughout the program, send me an email at messiahhour@gmail.com, or you can email the station at IsraelSportsAndNewsRadio.com. Of course, terrible tragedy that occurred on Shabbat. This has been very well known throughout the world of 7 young children dying in a fire in Brooklyn, and it was done through an accident, through a hot plate. We'll talk about a little more what a hot plate is, and the Sabbath observance and all the technicalities regarding it. The father was not there. He was at a religious conference, and he heard the news when he got back. And there were 2 funerals. There was a funeral in Brooklyn. There was also a funeral on March 23rd, which is Monday of this week, at Har Menuchot. So we're going to talk about what all these things mean. Obviously, there's a lot of questions of how could something this cruel happen when we believe in a merciful God, and why this happened, and all this kind of stuff. So on the line right now to shed some light is the co-author of the book, The World of the Ger, from Solmazal.com and GerGer.com, Rabbi David Katz. Rabbi, how you doing?
Hi, Ari. Thanks for having me back on. It's a pleasure as always.
Yes, and it is certainly a somber time in the Jewish world. I want to talk, there's so many places to go with. First, let's talk about general Shabbos observance, because it was brought to my attention by some of my friends, you know, this hot plate idea could be dangerous, and it's not the first time something like this has happened. You hear stories where people light the candles, they go to the synagogue, and the candles burn down the house. So if you could talk a bit about the concept of safety and Shabbat observance, you know, people, what priority they should go with, and some more details on the issue.
So Shabbos Halacha, the laws of keeping the Shabbat, it has a lot of factors that most Jews probably don't know much about it, and certainly non-Jews don't know much about it. And there's a big thing going around now that in the book that we wrote, The World of the Ger, it speaks about how a ger keeps the Shabbat. Everybody says, but that can't be, right? How can a non-Jew keep the Shabbos like a Jew? And every Jew learns this in yeshiva, that if a non-Jew keeps Shabbos, they're obligated to die. So, I mean, you can already see kind of the undertones of this kind of way that's going. But the idea is that the ger he keeps a Shabbat not like a Jew, is that he's allowed to break the Shabbat in the categories what are called 39 levels of malachot, of creative labor. That there's 39 levels of creative labor that a Jew is not to do on Shabbos. And the non-Jew is able to do those 39 levels of labor. Thus, the Jewish command of Shabbos has and achieves one function, and the non-Jewish Shabbos really is a statement of non-idolatry and sanctification that God gave the Torah to Israel. God created the world, and the non-Jew is here to say Amen to such an endeavor alongside the Jews who are keeping it according to the regular commandment of Vayichulu Eser Shemayim V'Aretz. God had finished his work in creation, and now he is resting, and the Jews are commanded to follow likewise. Okay, now that we understand there are 39 levels of labor, the laborious rituals are not what you would think, right? For example, for a Jew, it is forbidden if he has a vegetable medley on his plate. He cannot separate the corn from the peas in order to say, I reject one over the other. There's ways of separating without, particularly separating. You can't write on Shabbos. You can't extinguish or make a flame. You cannot cut. You can't walk across the country. You can't do certain things, 39 things, and their logical derivatives. So one of the things that Jews like to do is to have hot food on Shabbos. Shabbos day particularly. Many people have heard of cholent. It's like a stew, a hot stew to eat. And the way you accomplish hot food since electricity is forbidden, making a flame is forbidden. The olden days, they would take an oven and put some kind of twigs and make them into coals going into Shabbos. And this would stay lowly ignited for X amount of hours. So say at least through tomorrow morning's morning hours. So you'd put the food on what's called the blech. The blech is the Hebrew, or not really Hebrew, but Jewish term for the hot plate. And that in those days, it was literally coals and a plate over the coals. And then you would have, in the morning, you put the food on. It was already cooked a certain degree before Shabbos. And now you would have hot food. Well, in today's generations, we don't stoke coals or have, real live coals or flames going on Shabbos as per our food. What they've invented is what's called the blech, or the hot plate. It's a big electric, I guess it's not really a plate, it's a platform with real short little stubby legs, and you put it on the counter, and a hot plate is more of a cooking tool for heating up a pot for cooking. This is more of a warming tool, right? It gets hot that you can burn yourself, but it's not as hot as to properly cook, a meal. And so you position your pots and pans and plates that you want heated for the day meal along the platform, the blech. It's electrically heated. Most of them don't have a temperature gauge. It just gets to a certain level, and you plug it in before Shabbos. It stays hot all Shabbos. When you're time for the meal, you're ready to eat. An hour before, 2 hours before, in the prescribed fashion according to the law, you place your pots and pans of cooked food on the blech, and you heat them up. And on Shabbos, you will have a hot food entree ready to go for the sanctification of what's called Kavod Shabbos, or I would say the enjoyment and sanctification of the Shabbat.
And what occurred was there was an accident in the nighttime where there was a malfunction with the hot plate. That's what started the fire, and that's what killed these young children. So a lot of people might say they were punished in essence for keeping Shabbat. You're a rabbi. What would you say to that?
So there's no way to stop doing this. We're not going to stop keeping Shabbos because it happened. The question is, should we stop using hot plates? I know my mother called me stressed out last night saying, why would you continue using a hot plate? Or for the blech, let's call it. And the fact is Shabbos has been, preparation and practice, has been using the blech and before then the coals since the advent of Shabbos thousands of years ago. It's obviously horrible what happened. Their blech, I read about it, malfunction inside. It was not working in the proper way for the time that they bought it. It was defective, and that blech was destined to at least destroy itself. Now, every product we have is this way. I mean, what if it's a frum family, a religious family, and the brakes on their car go out? Should we stop buying cars? Things in this world are defective, and we have to deal with those defective things. The fact that what happened, it's a tragedy. We know that. It's just a shame that it had to happen, in probably the most vulnerable conditions. Shabbos, when you leave your electrical devices on. I know this bothers me a lot. I really don't like to leave the house when the candles are burning for lighting Shabbos candles. I don't like to leave the house in the winter when we have the heating ovens on, to keep warm in the house in the cold spot winter. Drives me nuts because of this, leaving things on that are very dangerous. We have to have trust in God that He commands to abandon creative labor, and we're also maybe not as much obligated, but urged and even, not so much, again, commanded to, let's say, have hot food on Shabbos, but it's just the way it's done that, we're not going to freeze on Shabbos. You're allowed to have your space heaters on and your radiators on and your blech on. You do things that are potentially dangerous. I mean, one of them is when we would visit the temple and the people in the north would abandon their homes. And the question is, wouldn't people see that as an opportunity to rob the families going to the temple? The answer is we have to place our trust in God and believe that as much as God has given the Shabbos, He has also dedicated Himself to protecting the Shabbos keepers on Shabbos, which obviously it brings up the obvious contradiction, and why would God allow it to happen? But that's a question of God's providence, as not so much as a case of is Shabbos safe or dangerous.
Okay, but can there be things done or maybe rabbinical decrees that somehow increase the safety? Because we know that you're allowed to save a life. You can break Shabbat to save a life. So could there be some type of rabbinical decree saying this is not safe to do, this is dangerous, so therefore you can't do it, it's too risky? Can anything like that happen?
I mean, you could, where do we see this? I guess it's like, it's like getting your tefillin checked, right? Whenever something bad happens to somebody, not on this caliber, what's the obvious thing we always say? Have you checked your mezuzahs, right? Have you checked your tefillin? Because in tefillin, there's the scribe makes the parchment, and sometimes the letters chip inside the scrolls of mezuzah or tefillin, the garments, religious garments, and doorposts. And if something bad happens, you can take it to the scribe, and oftentimes you'll see a letter chipped, which makes it invalid. And you get it fixed, what's called Yishuv Hadas. You have calm and sane mind. So just thinking, the manufacturers of the blech, maybe there could be a way to have your blech inspected. If it's in perfect working condition, like your cars, for emissions testing. Maybe a way to check your electrical devices if they're faulty. I mean, I think this would be a good thing for the entire world. There's something that used to freak me out more as a kid than hearing about how someone's VCR, back when VCRs were around, like defective wire could burn the house down. I remember that happened when I was a kid. And electrical devices are scary. We have so many things plugged in, and I don't know if our houses and circuit breakers are really fit to achieve full safety for all of our devices and computers and electric. I mean, we're a very electric society, and with cultures like Judaism that leaves these things in for a 24-hour period where we're accustomed to not adjusting to these things in that period rather than just letting them be. It would make me comfortable if there was a way to check kind of like, just the overall safety of the venue. If there's any kind of, I don't know if they can do it or not. I'm just saying, to me, that would be a big peace of mind, just to know that my devices are safe.
Indeed, and that's something that may be talked about more, especially after this terrible tragedy. Again, if you're just joining us, this is the Messiah Hour here on IsraelSportsAndNewsRadio.com. Email MessiahHour@gmail.com, or you can email the station at IsraelSportsAndNewsRadio@gmail.com. Our guest is Rabbi David Katz, co-author of the book, The World of the Ger. So, Rabbi Katz, it's been discussed a lot of the concept that you can save, again, you can break Shabbat to save a Jewish person's life, but here's the elephant in the room, so to speak. Can you break Shabbat to save a non-Jewish life?
So this is one of the biggest questions in the entire Ger sugya. In the Ger discussion, again, Ger is your righteous non-Jew who keeps the Torah certain to whatever extent. He's the fourth house of Israel. It's part of the team, even though he's not Jewish. He's involved, And so the ger, you would have an obligation to help and save. That's a fact. And the question then becomes, which makes the question great, is at what point can a Jew violate Shabbos for the sake of a non-Jew? And this is also why originally, just bringing out ger, introducing this kind of level of observance on the nations has been skeptical among the Jews, because it changes the rules, right? Once there's the non-Jew involved, the biggest kind of epicenter as such a shake or ruckus is the Jewish involvement of Shabbos, right? And we're saying, if the non-Jew is going to be, let's say, keep Shabbos, can I, the Jew, have him over? Can the non-Jew keep Shabbos? Can we keep Shabbos together? What's the involvement of our wine? Because non-Jewish wine is forbidden. A lot of philosophical questions come up, and Shabbos comes up every week. And once you're getting involved in those kind of circles, then your week is going to be enhanced in the learning together. And, there's been a separation of the two for many thousands of years, Jews and non-Jews. So once you get into this, you have a lot of ethical and philosophical, even practical issues to solve. Now again, once ger is achieved, we no longer have any kind of issue. But for a long time, ger was not practical, right? The idolatrous religions make it so that there is no ger. With Christianity on its way out, and radical Islam is the last flicker of the candle by their own design from radicalism, we have to answer these questions. But what has happened over hundreds of years towards the end of the exile, the law rendering rabbis have decreed that when a non-Jew is in danger on Shabbos, it's a mitzvah to save him as well. Right? So the rabbis have sensed that idolatry is leaving, right? That the pure evil of the world isn't as it was. Even though we see a lot of evil today, it's not so much as, antithetical to the Torah as opposed to a regular evil of the Torah. Right? If somebody steals today, they're not doing it to defame God. Right? But back in the day, if somebody did something, it was against the God of Israel. And that is forbidden. So therefore, when a Jew sees on the Shabbos that a non-Jew is dying, suffering, or needs attended to, right? We're not reading the word like Jeffrey Dahmer was asking for help. Obviously you're not going to help him, right? The guy was against the laws of humanity. But so today's non-Jew is not that. I guess what you could call them is not realized yet ger, because the nature of idolatry is leaving the world. Eventually, the whole world will appreciate the Torah, God, the whole story. And for this, we have a Messianic end. We know the end is good, and we know that the world is really saved from its destruction. So if somebody yet is not, realizing where their soul is, that's not a penalty against humanity. That's a situation that we're dealing with. So therefore, on Shabbos, really, there's no excuse to let somebody die. Every soul is meant to live. And as the old saying goes, you can put out a candle of Israel to save the candle of Israel. Right? A literal candle you can extinguish for the sake of saving a soul.
And there's also the concept that you save a person, they're able to do more mitzvot as far as a religious technical level anyway. So there's only the 3 cardinal sins that a person's supposed to give up their life before doing: murder, sexual sins, and, of course, idol worship. Again, this is the Messiah Hour here on IsraelSportsAndNewsRadio.com. And if you're just joining us, a very fascinating discussion with Rabbi David Katz. He's the co-author of the hit book, The World of the Ger. That book can be found on Somazal.com and GerGer.com. Any emails or any questions, you can send an email to MessiahHour@gmail.com, or you can email the station, IsraelSportsAndNewsRadio@gmail.com. Rabbi Katz, a lot of interesting things have come out since this tragedy, such as the names of the children who were killed, and I know that is your expertise. So tell us the significance of the names of the children who passed away on Shabbat.
So the Vilna Gaon teaches in a book called Kol HaTorah that the names, particularly of Jews, because they have Hebrew names, and Hebrew conveys a certain level of wisdom, that through the names you can understand what God is involved with of the generation. For that reason, it's illegal to take a census, and King David was punished. But when the name of someone comes up, and not as a nation taking the names, but through death or achievement, you can look at the name and see what the aspect of the time is involved. And as we know, we are towards the redemption, and we see the horrific nature that names are coming up, whether it's a great rabbi that dies, whether it's a great soul that dies, whether it's the kids that spawned the Gaza war, right? The children that died with their names offered as an insight to where we're going. And now 7, as the Father called them, 7 pure sheep that God sacrificed. You know, how can it happen? That's one issue. How can it happen? But the Vilna Gaon says that names are like the choshen, the breastplate of the high priest. And you can look to the name to understand what's in the air, what the mazel is. And there's the whole book, Kol HaTorah, offers a system of gematria, numerical values, to really appreciate and understand kind of a map of where we're going and the concepts involved, particularly that lead to a redemption or telling a redemption story. And I want to point out now several of the gems that are in the names that we otherwise wouldn't have known unless the kids' names would have come up. Now, you could say, you know, how could it? It's a horrible thing to get the names in that way. Now, you know, couldn't it have come from achievement? Well, I suppose it could, but whatever it is, God knows best. It happened. We'll get into the providence in a minute after the names are expounded upon. But for whatever it's worth, this is how the names came up. And these are some of the things that we found. One thing I want to point out is years ago, Rav Kadori, a famous Kabbalist, before he died, he came out with a letter saying the name of the Messiah. And in that, it was a strange kind of letter. It had hints in it, but it came out that if you constructed it in a certain way, it spelled the name Yehoshua, as in Joshua. But it was spelled with a bit of a change. It was likely spelled the name Yeshua with the additional hey. And a lot of people wanted to say, they took this kind of teaching captive and said that the rabbi was speaking of Jesus and that this was a Christian thing. Now, the Jews were involved in this kind of letter before the Christians got involved. And everyone knows that A, the name Joshua is not the same as Jesus. 2, the word Yeshua means salvation. King David uses the term often in his Tehillim, in his Psalms. And what the rabbi meant was certainly not Jesus. That's a fact. But when the Messianics got involved, they said, here you go, it's a proof that Jesus was on the mind of Rav Kadori. And what I want to say now, you know, number 1, again, Joshua is not that. Number 2, Rav Kadori did not mean that. It just doesn't need explained. Number 3, the word Yeshua is not a bad word by Jews. And we don't mean it for Jesus at all. Again, it means salvation. Ari, when you daven mincha today, you're going to say Karen Yeshua, all right, 3 times a day. Lift the horn of salvation. Salvation is a Jewish concept, Jewish term. It's just part of our vernacular. But what's interesting is one of the kids that died, his name was Yeshua, right? And we know the father named the son, along with the other names, Yaakov, Moshe, and David, that this was not a name of Jesus. Right? This was about the salvation. So number one, the message is that yes, Jews have this name in their culture. Number two, they don't have any connection to Jesus whatsoever. It's like the old guy in the shtetl that doesn't even know who Jesus or Christmas was. So it's showing that just as Moshe was a redemption type soul, and as well as David and Jacob who became Israel, right? The father named the son Yeshua, which means in his heart, Gavriel Sasun. He is looking for the Yeshua. Why does a father name his kids the way he names them? Names are prophetic. That's one of the gifts of names, which is why names tell a story. So just look at the story of the names. You have Moshe, David, Yaakov, and Yeshua, right? All just begging for the redemption. Then you have the daughters, Sarah, the first matriarch of Israel, the woman that Abraham found, which started the mission, Rivka, the wife of Isaac, right? Continuing the righteous mission. Then you have Eliana, right? That my God will answer. And that's, you can see the story being told in the names. It's not as the easiest on the heart to hear the story, but there is a story. One of the gematrias is 499. That there's 499 powers of the left and the right, which equal 999. And we can get to the highest levels, but that 500th or the 1000th level only comes from above, from God. So that was in the name. Then you have another name, another gematria, 453, which is the same as Melech Mashiach, the King Messiah. Another name, when you look at David ben Gavriel Avigail, the Hebrew name of the parents and the son, the initial letters spells Bo God, Bet Aleph Gimel Dalid. When the tribe of God, I guess in English you would spell G-A-D, when God was born, they said, wow, what good fortune will come. And the language of the Torah said, Bo God, right, will come great things. Bo God. So the initial letters of David ben Avigail and Gavriel is Bo God. Good things will come. That the gematria of Gavriel and Avigail is Netzach, which is the victory. Also Kavod, as in the glory of God will be revealed. The name Moshe ben Gavriel and Avigail, the son's name is Moshe. In his name there's a gematria 643, which speaks of Edus be Yosef. That the testimony is in Joseph. As when Joseph, as in the Messiah, son of Joseph, will be picked out and brought up to greatness. So we see that in the names, there's very powerful messages and very consistent and clear, conforming to the methodology of the Vilna Gaon, i.e., the system of redemption. Right? For another gematria of David's name was 370, which it says that there's 370 lights from above that accompany the complete redemption. And alongside that gematria in his name is 314, the name of God Shin Dal Yud. We pronounce it Shakai. And it's also the same gematria as the angel Matat, which is synonymous with the Messianic Redeemer in the attribute of Yesod, or foundation. What these words mean in short is that with very clear wisdom language, the names of these souls have illuminated a wisdom of redemption and anticipation in time, either Kabbalistically or redemption-wise. There's a very clear system being brought to light here, and it's just a shame that it had to happen under the circumstances that it did.
Again, this is the Messiah Hour here on IsraelSportsAndNewsRadio.com. And if you want to email this show, you can do so at MessiahHour@gmail.com, or you can email the station at IsraelSportsAndNewsRadio@gmail.com. Our guest this afternoon, Rabbi David Katz, co-author of the book SoulMazal.com. Rabbi Katz, off the air, you were explaining to me in Arizal that talks about this concept. So can you explain to our audience what the concept is?
So the Rizal describes that the sin of Adam resulted in sparks of holiness that were left throughout the creation. Our job is to return those sparks through mitzvot, commandments, good deeds, and Torah. So when you achieve a type of rectification on reality, a spark is returned, right? Call it whatever good deeds in history, building the Beit HaMikdash, the temple, whatever returns sparks, making, let's say, holiness prominent in the world. And what happens is through sin, the light is trapped below, and the negative forces are empowered to prevent the returning light. So sometimes serving God is not enough. The normative mitzvot and the manner of good is not enough. We know that on Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, we pray the ceremony of the 10 martyrs. 10 martyr rabbis were butchered by the hands of the Romans. Rabbi Akiva was one of them. And their bodies were offered as kind of an offering. They died what's called Moser Nefesh, by giving of self. And so when something like that happens in history, it releases the grasp of the evil forces and allows life to continue on a way of good. The system is that when a soul is taken, like the 10 martyrs, or a Moses, a Miriam, an Aaron, a Joseph, a Jacob, right? Very much you see, even David, you see the souls, the names of these kids. That which brings about a salvation. Because that's what we need, is a salvation. When the light is trapped, we cannot progress. You need a salvation. You need to get things going. Now, that doesn't come from some kind of Christian story and tale of a savior. Right? The savior is God, and God manipulates creation to get it going. Now, again, we can do that from our kind deeds and our actions, that God can inspire man to do mitzvot. And then we return the light. Again, when we sin, we prevent the light. And what God does is God frees things up to return the light. Unfortunately, that can be a holocaust of 6 million people. And that's not fun. Unfortunately, it can be the destructions of the first and second temples and people that died along with that time, and that's not fun. It can be the 10 martyrs and pogroms, and that is not fun. Okay? None of this is fun. The Hanukkah miracle was suffering until the salvation was brought by their self-sacrificing ways. So serving God is a serious endeavor. It has consequences, and it is not fun. And the whole point of morale and inspiration in Torah is that it will always be better if we return the light rather than God taking the light for himself to free things up. Now, the world went into a certain kind of calm after World War II, but it came because of a disaster. We're approaching another tidal wave in history. The redemption can either come by peace or it can come through blood. Everybody knows it. Everyone's read the prophecies, and it really is up to us. And so what happens is, we saw over the summer, 3 boys were executed, but their blood saved how many thousands of people by exposing the tunnels, started a war, and Israel was victorious. We prevented a lot more blood. Now, again, it shouldn't have to be that way, but it is. And at the same token, these souls are taken to achieve a rectification or a repair above, a repair that is needed on high, that we free up the light below. So some things just need a very difficult repair. It says that the soul of Messiah can only come into the world through extreme difficulty. Look no further than Judah and Tamar, as she posed as a harlot to eventually give birth to the forebearer of the Messiah. So these ways are very much like the Parah Aduma, the red heifer, whose ashes miraculously make impure before they purify. Which, by the way, that gematria was also found in the boys' names. 699, a derivative gematria of paraduma, red heifer. So sometimes God operates in mysterious ways with souls to bring about a repair. And here, as the Father said, God took 7 pure sheep, which happened on Rosh Chodesh, the beginning of the month, and that teaching, it happens in reality, not through souls, but through animals, on the Rosh Chodesh, the new month. Why God needed to take the souls to achieve the repair, and what will the repair be, and what was achieved through this loss, that's in the eyes of God, and that's in the thoughts of God. But God does state, and through his actions and through revelations, that souls coming and going, whether in life or in death, have an achievement in a repair.
All right, Rabbi, last question we have for you before we let you go. I understand there is a very interesting idea put out there, or that's already been known, but it's been more brought up to light, that a concept of a fire or something happened in the house that takes the lives of 5 righteous people. The Mashiach comes within a certain amount of days after that, a short period of time. Can you tell our audience a bit about that concept?
The Zohar is a famous passage that's been going around for a long time. It started with the murders of Ambai, the Chabad house. That after a certain amount of things will go on in the year and Revelation, that it culminates with 5 tzadikei emes, 5 righteous souls will be killed in a Beit Knesset. And literally it's a synagogue, but a Beit Knesset means a house where people are gathered. And 32 days after the souls are killed, you can expect the beginning of the redemption to happen. Again, people thought it was Mumbai because 5 were killed. People thought it was the French things that happened because of the amount of people that died. Anytime 5 people die, people have looked to this Zohar for a clue. Now you'll say 7 people died, but the exact language is among them 5 people will die. So you'd actually want more than 5 to be in the number to achieve what the Zohar is saying. Now you don't want people to die ever, but if it's gonna happen, we look to the Zohar. 32 days after this disaster, we arrive to Yom Zikaron in Israel, right? The day of remembering the fallen and the dead of Israel. Will it be that? I don't know. Just made me think of anytime there's a disaster, I look there. It comes out in a very peculiar way. Time will tell, and we'll see if this was a step towards redemption in a way that we kind of got a bit of a zetz to wake up and realize that things are not right. It certainly wasn't a good thing. This is not a pat on the back way to go. But the exact message to hear from it, I think it's quite simply, it's a response to wake up and realize what's going on in the world.
Absolutely, and obviously we hope Mashiach comes as soon as possible. If he were to come in 32 days after the tragedy, then it would kind of all be clear, all make sense to us. But times that we have right now, I was very touched that there was a major outpouring of the funeral here in Israel. There were, again, 2 funerals, one in Brooklyn, one in Har Menachot in Jerusalem. Strangers, as I say all the time, really no strangers in Israel. We're all together at the end of the day. So people came out that did not know the family and came to the funeral. So it was very good to see, and we appreciate the Rabbi coming on in these tough times to try to figure out what exactly happened, what exactly is going on. Again, Rabbi, thank you for being on today's show.
Thanks for having me on as always, Ari.
Indeed. And if you want to pick up the Rabbi's book, The World of the Ger, you can go to somazal.com or gergear.com, or you can find the book on Amazon. Again, today's episode of the Messiah Hour you can also find on YouTube. If you're listening to this broadcast and you're not on YouTube, you also can go to YouTube and type in Messiah Hour with Ari Lewis, and you can subscribe to the YouTube channel. It is free to do so. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or complaints, it is a Jewish country after all, you can email the show at messiahhour@gmail.com, or you can email the station Israel Sports and News Radio at gmail.com. Check out anything that is to your fancy. Tell people about it. Spread the word. I want as many people to know about this show as possible. It takes us higher in YouTube searches and Google rankings for more people to subscribe, more people to know about the show. So please do me that service. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Have a great day. This is the Messiah Hour on Israel Sports and News Radio.com.